Hey everybody, my name's Dan. I work for Newport Festivals Foundation. I'm here at the 2021 Newport Jazz Festival with our artistic director, Mr. Christian McBride. Christian, thank you for taking the time to talk. We spent the last 3 days talking to artists on the Newport Jazz lineup, bringing them in here and talking about music education, mentorship, things like that, sharing advice from the artists with the students. And we sort of wanted to flip it and ask you some questions for a change. Awesome.
Bring it.
So let me start with this, actually. Your title, Artistic Director. What does that mean?
Well, it basically means to set the tone, the artistic tone for the festival. It's a lot more of a challenge than it would seem, because a lot of people think you run a festival and you just get cool artists.
Right.
That's a little too simplistic. You know, with the Newport Jazz Festival specifically, this is a legacy that was set by George Wein, starting in 1954. And if you look at the history of the Newport Jazz Festival, you are also looking at the history of jazz. They're synonymous with one another. Every major thing that has happened in the jazz world has been presented here at the Newport Jazz Festival, in some cases before it became a phenomenon, you know? Right. And so I have to keep that in mind, because that's a very serious and rich legacy that is important to our music.
And so when when it's January, February, you're starting to think about the lineup for the next year.
Oh man, we think about it in October.
In October?
Yeah.
So what's going through your mind in October when you're thinking about the next year's lineup?
Yeah. Well, a few different things. You know, one benefit that I have is that I'm a musician. So there's almost no one that has played this festival during my tenure that I don't know or haven't worked with. So they know that they're coming where their friend is. You know, I can communicate with them, you know, as a musician, more so than, you know, as a non-musician's artistic director, which isn't bad, but it just, they know we've been in the trenches together on the road and in the studio. So they trust me, they know me, we're all friends. But I would say that I get a wish list of people who I love and really want to hear at the festival. And you know, we always try to balance it out by what we call jazz adjacent artists, you know, because that's another part of George Wein's legacy. You know, and I know jazz fans can be, they're a tough crowd, you know, they're like foodies, you know what I mean? You work very, very hard at preparing the best dish you've ever prepared in your life. And foodies are like, it's undercooked by 2 degrees.
Right.
And you know, you just like, right?
Yeah.
So,
well, I like the point that you made about the relationships that you have with artists, because I think for the students to hear, sometimes I think people will see a lineup and they'll think those are just the bands that they wanted to play and then they played. But it's really about relationships. It's about the relationships that you
all about relationships.
And Jay Sweet, our executive producer, it's the relationships that you have with artists that make them want to come here, and not only come here but also put on a great show.
And he has those relationships with everyone that comes to the folk festival, you know. And it's always been fun to bring, you know, like I said, some jazz adjacent artists, because when the jazz community can sometimes get stirred up, like, you know, oh, it's just too much pop, you know. Well, I mean, look, Chuck Berry played the Newport Jazz Festival in the 50s.
Right.
Mahalia Jackson played the Newport Jazz Festival in the 50s. Right. People like James Brown, Frank Zappa, Sly and the Family Stone, the Allman Brothers, you know, all kinds of, you know, so-called non-jazz artists have played the festival. And so that's not necessarily breaking with tradition by having a group like the Roots or Common or George Clinton, you know, that's keeping with.
It's almost like breaking with tradition is part of the tradition, in a sense.
That's exact. I think that really is what jazz is.
Right.
You know, you can't break the rules unless you know the rules, right? And once you learn the rules, in this case, once you learn what the legacy of the Newport Jazz Festival is, you realize that the tradition is to always, you know where your core is.
Right.
but you can tweak it and
That's
do
what makes
this.
it interesting.
That's what makes it interesting.
So let's talk music education.
Yeah.
Where does your journey with music begin? Did you grow up in a music family?
Yeah.
Or
I'm fortunate. I have two working bass players in my family. Both my father and my great uncle are professional bass players. So I'm part of the family business.
So did you just grow up knowing you were going to play bass?
Well, it was either going to be bass or pro football. Those were the two things I really loved. But I started playing the electric bass when I was 9 years old, and I have to say, the first time I touched it, I knew that's what I was going to do for the rest of my life.
It's interesting that you said it's either pro football or be a musician. I think there are, from a music education perspective, a lot of parallels with sports and music.
Absolutely, and I love drawing those parallels.
Right.
Particularly in jazz, there's always this thing of creating something new, being fresh, and having no boundaries. But I feel like real true freedom is working to express yourself within those boundaries. If you know something is there, you have something to strive to kind of push or break or tweak or reshape, you know what I mean?
Right.
But if there's nothing there, there's no resistance, So with sports, you can use any sport, basketball, baseball, or football. But like in sports, let's take football, for example. You get this big playbook that you have to learn. You got to learn all the plays. You got to remember all of the diagrams and the codes for, when you get in the huddle. You go to practice. When you call this offense, you're going to see a nickel defense. You're going to see a dime defense. So you know how to handle that. But once the game starts, you don't know what you're going to see.
Right.
Now, how do you deal with something you haven't seen? You study. You study every scenario possible to be able to score or to be able to gain yards. And I think it's the same thing with music. It's like in order to really be free, in order to really create something different, you got to study and know every single thing that's happened before, because rarely you're going to find a situation that's actually new.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Because someone's done something that you're trying to do. You just aren't aware of it yet.
Yep. I think sports and music, they sort of teach the same principles. They flex the same muscles.
Yeah.
And some people gravitate towards sports. Some people gravitate towards music.
That's right.
And that's why in schools we have to have both options, right?
Yes.
We can't be overfunding sports or overfunding music. They have to be available for both types of kids.
I have a friend who used to run he's part of the athletic department at the University of Florida. He's also a big jazz fan.
Right.
And he said, if the arts department got 1% of the funding that the football program had, they would have the largest funded arts program in all of America.
Wow.
I said, man, now that's some serious money going into football.
Right.
He said, man, you have no idea.
Yep. Hopefully we're getting to a place where that's going to start evening out.
Yeah.
And we're at 50-50 with sports and the arts.
Yeah.
So talk to me about, we've been asking artists this question all weekend. Talk to me about one music educator that really took you under their wing and set you on a track towards your career in music. Not necessarily a traditional educator, but just an individual.
Right. It's I was fortunate also to grow up in Philadelphia. And Philadelphia is a city that has always had a very deep commitment to music education. My high school classmates were the Roots, Boys to Men, Joey DeFrancesco, Kurt Rosenwinkel, and we all had the same instructors.
What was it about your high school that made it such an impressive lineup of people at the time that you were there? Was it funding, or was it?
Well, it's the high school for the creative and performing arts.
Right. Okay.
It's a public school.
Yeah.
But it was the first school in Philadelphia dedicated solely to the performing arts. Bilal went there, the R&B singer. He came long after we did. Jasmine Sullivan also went there. Erica Alexander, the actress, went there. So a whole bunch of people came out of there. I think that it was just by fate. All of us that I mentioned came to Kappa at the exact same time.
Right.
You know, and those are the people that just got famous. There were some other students there who were daily inspirations that just never became household names.
Sure.
And to go to a school like that where everybody's good, you know, you come to school every day and you hear somebody, you know, in the hallway practicing a choral excerpt, or you see art students, you know, coming in with their work, and dancers in the hallway practicing their positions and stuff like that. So you had really no choice to being lazy was not an option.
Yeah.
Because there was always somebody there that made you think, oh, I better go practice.
Right. It must have driven you to just keep practicing, keep one-upping yourself so that you could be on that level. Yeah, it's amazing.
I happen to think competition is actually a good thing.
And people don't think of competition in the arts as being a healthy thing almost. In sports, they understand it, but with the arts, it's just, you know, it's equally effective.
Man, listen, one of the worst / best things that ever happened to me was when I auditioned for college at Juilliard. You know, I knew that Juilliard was like the most world-renowned, you know, conservatory in the world when it came to music, particularly classical music. There was no jazz program when I went there. But I knew in my heart I was an adequate classical bassist. You know, maybe I didn't deserve to go to Juilliard. I was more of a jazz player, right? But I said, well, let me go and see what happens. And so when I took my audition at Juilliard, what they should have done, what they did, which is what they probably shouldn't have done, is I could hear the bass players who auditioned before me.
Interesting.
And man, they were just...
That get in your head?
Badly.
Yeah.
Badly. Because, you know, I went in there with my little basic, you know, bass pieces that I played. You know, I played like a Vivaldi sonata and a Marcello sonata, and I can't remember what the third piece was. But like these guys were in there playing, you know, orchestral excerpts and the Echo Sonata and excerpts from the Dragonetti, you know, bass concerto. And that's like, you know, you can't play that stuff unless you're like a real serious classical bassist. Right. And they were nailing it, you know. And I'm just sitting there in my chair like, I should probably go home, you know, because I know I'm not that.
But you got up, you got the audition, did you get in?
I went in there, I sucked it up. I was like, well, it's too late to go home now. You know, let me just go and get it over with, you know. Yeah. And I took my audition and I played my two pieces, and the worst part ever was like the bass faculty. So like, it was in a room, very small room, classroom, and they were literally like 5 feet away from me. Like they were up on me. Wow. You know, so I'm like, man, I can't even get any space.
What advice do you give to that kid who's about to play their audition? What would you tell them before they went on?
Take a deep breath and go.
Yeah.
Just take a deep breath and be like, I got this. Yeah. You know, and just do your best. And I got in, much to my shock. Yeah. You know, that was a wonderful day. My mom came running in the house with the mail, and there was a big envelope from Juilliard. And I still remember the quote. She was like, "They don't turn people down with envelopes this big."
They don't invest in envelopes that big.
That's right.
They're going to turn them down.
That's
wow.
right.
That's really good. That's great.
Yep.
Well, Christian, thank you so much for taking the time. I've been at these festivals for 10 days, and this has been the highlight talking to you. So thank you so much, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Dan.
And thank you for watching. Hope you got something out of this, and peace.